Today's episode was brought to you by Wild Bill's Fireworks, PopChevy.com, and the Kent Rose Foundation. This episode is also brought to you by TheForkIn.com.
Okay, Harold, boy, this is a big day for Behind the Shed. We got a really cool guest today, a guy I've known for a while and you've known longer than me that has a really rich history. So I'm going to let you introduce our guest and we'll get started here.
Thank you, Russ. First of all, I just want this special guest we have right now to know how delighted and elated we are to have you to come by and visit with us on the podcast. You. And a guy that, Tony, I guess we go way back to, you were running Buddy Lee Attractions when we met first time. You've come so far since then, so have we. And just so happens that you manage one of my favorite bands in the universe now. And probably one of the better bands in the universe.
I think so.
The group Alabama.
Yeah.
And we're so happy to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And with that, tell us how you got to Nashville and where you started and how you got to where you are now, which is your own man and your own company. And
yeah. Well, it didn't start off that way, but when I grew up in a small town in Kentucky, Bardstown, Kentucky, which is the bourbon capital of the world, and put a little rock band together when I was in high school and played all through college. And during that time, I kind of handled the business part for the band. I dealt with the agents and I dealt with the paying everybody and collecting the money. And I thought, I like the business side better than the musician side. Yeah. I was a drummer, and I wasn't that great of a drummer. I knew my limitations, and I thought I really want to be great at something, not adequate,
Yeah.
And so I said, I think I want to be an agent. I want to be a talent agent. And I was intrigued by it. So I started calling some agencies. I didn't call anybody in Nashville, but I called one in Cincinnati and one in Louisville, and none of them would hire me because I was young and didn't have any experience, and just right out of college. And but I was determined to do it, so I decided I'd just open up my own agency. I said, I'll show me,
Yes.
So I rented a 2-room office in Lexington, Kentucky, and started a little talent agency there, booking proms and fraternity parties and that kind of Holiday Inn, lounge acts and things like that. So that was going along okay. I wasn't making any money. I was probably making $50 to $100 a week commission. But I was enjoying what I was doing, and I was learning as I went,
Yeah.
One of the bands that I was booking at the time was from Nashville, and it was a group called Peace and Quiet. And they were by far the best band I'd ever heard, musically, vocally. I just blew everybody else I'd ever heard out of the water. And I later found out that they were all session guys, and they liked to go out on the weekend and play. Yeah. But they were all in the studio every day, 5 days a week, all of them. Chris Lozinger, he was the leader of the band.
What studios did they work in over there?
Huh?
Were they working in Cincinnati or in Lexington?
Lexington.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, I got to be friends with them, and I said, what would you recommend I do if I wanted to be a national talent agent? And they said, well, you got to go to New York, Los Angeles, or Nashville. And I said, well, Nashville's only 3 hours away. I think I'll try that, And they go, we have a band house that we all live in, which they did right behind Belmont University. And they said, you can have a room there until you can afford to get an apartment. You're welcome to stay there. So the next day I got a U-Haul trailer and I moved to Nashville, and I didn't know a single person here at all. And so I started knocking on doors. Of course, back then, this was in the the late 70s. There weren't any big agencies except for Buddy Lee. They were the biggest. There was no William Morris or CAA or UTA or any big agency. Big corporate agencies were not here yet. the reason they all came was because they knew what we were doing. They were like, whoa, they're doing a lot of touring and making a lot of money doing, country. And so that's why they all came. But anyway, nobody would offer me a job in Nashville. So finally, after about 2 weeks, I said, well, I'm just going to do the same thing I did in Lexington. I'll rent an office here on Music Row, a little office, and start my own little company again, my own little agency. So I did. It happened to be in the Buddy Lee building. And the Buddy Lee agency was the top 2 floors, and the bottom floor was, I think there was 8 offices on the first floor, and he rented those out to different songwriters and just different people that wanted to use them. So I rented that from him. I'd never met him. I knew who he was, obviously. So I started booking out of there, and one night I was working late. I used to work late because I could only get a hold of the club owners after 6 p.m. Most of them didn't even come in till after 6 p.m.,
Yeah.
They weren't there during the daytime. So, but this night it was about 8 o'clock, and I had a knock on the door in my office. And in walks this guy, big guy, 3-piece suit, very dapper, And he said, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Buddy Lee. And he said, every night when I leave the office, I see the light on under your door, and I hear you on the phone. And he said, you're somebody I'd like to have work for me. And I said, I'm thinking to myself, wow, that's what I've always wanted,
Yeah.
And he goes, if you ever need a job, you just go down the hall, go up the elevator, and I've got an office for you. And for some strange reason, I said, well, thank you, Mr. Lee, but I'm happy doing what I'm doing. I don't know why I said that. I don't know why it came out of my mouth, but it did. And he said, well, if you change your mind, let me know. Nice to meet you. And he left. So I go home that night to my girlfriend, who later became my wife, and I said, Buddy Lee offered me a job today. And she said, you took it, didn't you? And I said, no, I turned it down. And she's like, well, you call him first thing in the morning at 8 o'clock and take that job. That's what you've always wanted. I said, all right. So I did. And he said the same thing. When he answered the phone, he said, I wondered what took you so long. But he said, go down the hall, go up the elevator. I got a desk for you. So that's what I did. And I started there on November 1st of 1975 and was there for 33 years.
Wow.
And he taught me the business. I mean, he allowed me to do things that other agents weren't allowed to do in Nashville or anywhere. If you're an agent, they don't allow you to be a promoter. They don't allow you to be a producer. They don't allow you to consult or anything like that. You're just an agent. You have to be an agent. You can't be anything else. But in Buddy's world, he had no walls, and there wasn't anything you couldn't do. If you wanted to do something and it made sense, then do it. So that's where I really learned, a lot about promoting, because he was a promoter before he became an agent. He was a professional wrestler before he became a promoter.
Wow.
Yeah, he wrestled when he was 18 years old. He was from the Bronx in New York. And when he was 18, his dad, who was a plumber, called him into his room and he said, you need to get out of this town. And Buddy said, what do you mean? He said, well, you're hanging out with the wrong people. And I'm telling you, if you stick around with these people, you're going to get in trouble. And once you're involved with these people, you're always involved with these people. So you need to get out of here now. You need to leave. And so he moved to Boston, didn't have a job, and worked in a fruit market, delivering fruit, and tried to figure out what he was going to do. And this guy came by named Peffer. His last name was Peffer. And said, man, you're a good-looking guy. Buddy was about 6'4", and he had long blonde hair. He looked like Ric Flair, kind of. Wow. But so anyway, he started wrestling, and he wrestled until he was, I think, 25. But it just beat him up. It was rough. He said they used to jump 500 miles a night to go to the next match, and they got paid $50 to wrestle.
Wow.
Yeah, he said, and we all rode in the same car, about 6 of us in the same vehicle. But Yeah, so that's Buddy's background. And then, at the time, he was the biggest agency in Nashville, and we had about 140 artists that we represented.
Wow.
So, and it was all the iconic acts that you think about today, It was Willie and Waylon and Kristofferson and everybody from Freddie Fender to Johnny Paycheck to, you just go down the list.
Yeah.
And we had them all. So the first act that I ever was responsible for signing at Buddy Lee was a guy named George Strait.
Oh, my goodness.
So
That's a pretty good first signing.
That's a nice start.
he's done pretty good,
Yeah.
I would think. But Irv Woolsey, I knew Irv, and he was at MCA Records, and he called me one day, and he said, I'm going to try to get this kid that used to play at my club. He had a club in Texas, Irv did. He said, I used to hire this guy, and then he had to go to the military, and now he's out of the military, and he said, I want to get him a record deal here with MCA, and I'm going to need an agent. So I said, well, yeah, I'd be interested. And he said, well, when he comes up here, I'll bring him over. Excuse me. And he did. And that was the first act I ever signed to, and became his, what they call RA, responsible agent.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a start.
Yeah, man.
And then I had that experience, or that same type of luck through my career, because I was able to sign a lot of artists that became superstars, and a couple of them you helped me with Terry Clark and Sammy Kershaw.
Yeah.
But I got Ricky Van Shelton was a big deal at the time.
He
and,
was.
Yeah.
and got him, and then I had I signed Lorrie Morgan. Buddy used to book her father, George Morgan. So that's how I got connected with them. But
Harold, you made some records with Lorrie, didn't you?
Initially, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it just went on from there. I signed a group called Sawyer Brown,
Yeah.
and they won a TV contest. That was the first musical TV
I remember.
contest that Ed McMahon was the host of. I can't remember.
You
Something
Can
to
Be a
be a
Star.
star. You can be a star.
Yeah.
And they won that, and they won $100,000. And I remember them calling me up from the backstage that night and saying, do we have to pay you 10%? I said, no, not on a contest. I don't think I deserve
That's
anything
funny.
from that. So,
That's funny.
and then I had a lot of girls. I signed Patty Loveless, Mary Chapin Carpenter,
Yeah.
Trisha Yearwood, KT Oslin.
Yep.
There's a lot of females, and I guess I had a reputation of being able to deal with them.
Yeah.
But every time there was a new female country artist, they'd want to have a meeting, so that was good.
Yeah.
And then I got, Garth Brooks. That was another big, huge experience for me, and then I got the Dixie Chicks.
Wow.
Signed them before. We had them 8 years before they ever got their record deal.
You're kidding.
Wow.
Yeah, we were booking a lot of dates in Texas and Oklahoma and Arkansas.
Wow.
And they used to dress up in like Dale Evans dress, Western wear girls' dresses. That's what they used to wear on the road. And we booked them a lot. And for most of the stuff they did was corporate, private shows, because they never had a hit.
Yeah.
They didn't have a record deal. But then we got them a record deal, and we helped them get the record deal, and we helped them get a manager. They didn't have a manager either. And at the time, David Skepner, who used to manage Loretta Lynn,
Oh, I remember David.
he said, yeah, I'd like to manage them. So we got him involved, and he started managing them, and then he unfortunately passed away. So we had to find another manager for him, and ended up getting Simon Renshaw, who was working for Bill Ham out of Houston, Texas, with ZZ Top and Clint Black.
Yep.
And so they had sent Simon to Nashville to run Bill Ham's office for Nashville because they had Clint Black. And for whatever reason, once they set all that up and everything started working, they let him go. they let Simon go. And so Simon, I'd known him, and he kept coming up, is there anybody I can work for? You know, any acts I can work with? And so when the Dixie Chicks needed another manager, we suggested him. I said, he knows what he's doing, and he knows the record business, and he knows the concert business, and he worked with Bill Ham, who's a really good manager for many years. And so they hired him. So that Dixie Chicks hired Simon, and he was with them until he retired, really. Let's see, who else after that? So then we, you just keep thinking of the highlights, but assigned Miranda Lambert.
Okay.
Jason Aldean. Okay, a lot of those acts back in the, the 2000s and the 90s, anything that was going on then, we were fortunate enough to have them because, as you know, who you're associated with will associate you with other people. So if I was Garth Brooks' agent, everybody wanted me to be their agent.
Right.
If I was Dixie Chicks' agent, everybody wanted me to be, until they got in trouble, which we tried to fix, when they had their little problem in London.
Yeah.
But they weren't going to apologize. They were just going to deal with whatever happened. And of course, it just shut them down, really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Shut them down. Now they're back out touring again. But so I've had a wonderful, great career as an agent. And then after 33 years, my partner, I became co-owner of the agency. Buddy and I were 50-50 partners. And so when he got cancer and he passed away, he asked for me to have a meeting with him in Houston. And this was a few weeks before he passed, and he had his whole family there, and I guess they hadn't been told that I was his partner, and he wanted them to know that I owned half of the company, and if he wasn't around, that they needed to deal with me.
Wow.
As far as the agency goes, and 2 of his children worked there at the time, Joey and Donna. And so I did, and he called me in the room and he goes, I want you to make me a promise. He said, I'm not going to be around much longer. He said, but I want you to make me a promise that you'll stay with the agency for at least 10 more years, and so you can teach my kids and my wife how the business works and how it runs. And he said, they're not capable of doing that on their own, and I really need you to promise me that you'll do that. And I said, well, sure, buddy. I mean, I'm not going anywhere. I own half this company. I plan to be there the rest of my life, Yeah. So he passed away, and so I took over and did what he asked me to do. But it got really difficult probably in the second or third year after he passed away when I was dealing with a lot of things I wanted to do. I wanted the company to continue to grow. I wanted to hire more agents, and I wanted to sign more acts, and I wanted bigger office space. I was a dreamer, and but I felt confident about it. And but Buddy's wife, Rita, she just didn't feel the same. She wanted it to stay the way it was. Don't want to change anything. Just I'm happy with the way it is. And it's like, well, we got a lot of competitors coming into town. William Morris is here now, and CAA, and it's not like everybody's just going to come to us. It's going to be a war going on to get these acts. They're going to fight over them. And she said, well, no, I just want to keep it the way it is. So that kind of started me thinking, this might not work out. But I did make Buddy a promise, 10 years, so I'm going to stick with that promise. And so 10 years to the day, I turned in my resignation and sold my half of the company back to the Lee family and decided I was going to open up my own. I figured I could be an agent, I could be a manager, I could be a promoter, whatever I wanted to do, like Buddy had taught me. So I opened up my own little agency. That was in 2009. And I didn't really have any clients, by the way, and I'd signed a non-compete at Buddy's for 24 months. I couldn't represent anybody that I had represented at Buddy Lee Attractions for 2 years. Wow. So I thought, well, I can get through that. I'll find some other acts that I haven't represented, and I'll work with them. But so at that time was the same time that Alabama had gotten a call from Brad Paisley. You know, they had disbanded in 2004, as you know, from touring for 30-some years, and that was it. They were done, you know. And but Brad Paisley wrote this song called "Old Alabama," and that was probably in 2011, something like that.
Big hit record.
2011. And so he was always a big fan of Alabama's, and he called Randy Owen and he said, I wrote this song called "Old Alabama," and it's got pieces of all your all's hits. And I was wondering if you all could get back together and sing on it with me, sing the harmony parts. And the way the story goes, the way I was told, is Randy said, well, we haven't sung together in 8 years. I don't even know if we can still sing. He said, and we really don't talk to each other that much. You know, we live in the same town, but we just, when it was over, it was over. Yeah. But let me call Jeff and Teddy and see what they say. So he called them and said that Brad Paisley wanted them to sing on this song, and they said, well, let's see. And Randy says, I don't know if we can pull it off, but let's go try. So they went in the studio with him, and as Teddy told me, the first line, I think they were singing some part of Mountain Music, and he said their harmonies were exactly the same as they were when they started. Not when they ended, but when they started. He said it was on pitch, it was perfect key, and they sounded just like, you know, Alabama. It's supposed to. And they all three looked at each other kind of like in shock, you know, like we can still do this.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, man.
Still pull this off.
Yeah.
So so they recorded it. He released it. It became a #1 song for Brad Paisley.
Yeah.
With special guest Alabama. So he calls them up and he goes, hey, I'm doing a 40-city tour, and I was wondering if you all could be my surprise special guest. Or I don't think he said surprise, but my special guest on the tour. And they said, well, what? Like what? And you want open for you? And they go, no. He says, when I sing Old Alabama, you all just walk out and start singing your parts. The crowd will go crazy because they're not expecting it. And he said, and then when we're done with that song, you all, with my band and me, you sing a couple of your hits.
Yeah.
You know, just so like 3 or 4 songs is all I need you all to do. And you don't have to bring a band. You don't have to bring a crew. You just, the 3 of you, maybe and a road manager, and that's all you're going to need, you know. And so they said, well, let's talk about it. So at the time, they also needed a new manager. You know, I'm not sure how it ended up with Dale, but they made the decision they didn't want Dale to manage them at this new juncture in their career.
Right.
But he'd done a great job with them. I mean, my gosh, he had a lot to do with their success.
Yes.
I really feel. And so they did what they call a cattle call. They had a cattle call in Nashville at their attorney's office, Mike Milam, and they interviewed about 14 different managers to see if they wanted to pick one of these guys. And one of them was me. And I had just opened my company, so I was brand new, you know. But I knew those guys. I'd been booking them on shows and fairs, and I had a lot of our artists on tour with them, you know. Lorrie did a tour with them. Ricky Van Shelton did a tour with them. Yeah. So I went to the meeting, and I remember, never forget it, I walked in the meeting, and there's 3 of them are sitting there at a conference table, and I'm at the other end. They're down there, and I'm at the other end, and they go, we want to ask you a few questions. Well, Jeff had a computer, a laptop that he was typing on the whole time. I don't know what he was probably playing a game. Yeah. But and Teddy was just staring at me, and then Randy was the one asking the questions. But they started asking me questions like, "What would you say about this?" or "What would you say about that? What do you think about? Do you think we could record another album?" You remember Which brings up, I called you one afternoon, and we had lunch or breakfast, and I asked you, would you consider reproducing the band again? Yeah. You said, sure, absolutely. So anyway, long story short, I left that meeting, and they hired another guy to be their manager. And the guy was Corin Capshaw with Red Light Management.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, he was, he had Dave Matthews Band, and didn't really have any country artist at the time, I don't think. But for whatever reason, they decided to go with him. Well, 3 months go by, and I get a phone call. Now it's Christmas time. It's December 23rd, and I get a phone call from Randy, Teddy, and Jeff. They're all three on the phone. And I go, hey, we need to talk to you about something. Can you come to Fort Payne tomorrow and meet with us? And I was like, tomorrow's Christmas Eve, and I got two little children, and I don't think I can leave on Christmas Eve, but I'll come down there right after Christmas. And they all started laughing because they knew I wasn't going to come down there on Christmas Eve. And so I said, I'll be down there on the 26th. So the day after Christmas, I drove down to Fort Payne. I'd never been to Fort Payne. Went to what they called their world headquarters, which was huge. It used to be a Chevrolet dealership, actually. Yeah. But and they had a museum and a fan club and rehearsal hall, and they stored all their equipment there. They had plenty of room for everything. But anyway, we had the meeting, and they go, well, the reason we called you is because we're going to let Mr. Capshaw go. And they'd only been with him for a few months, Wow. And I said, problem? He said, well, no, not really. He said, I think he's good at what he does, and he sold us on him, but he said, we haven't spoken to him since the day we interviewed him at Mike Milan's office. He turned us over to some junior people in his company, and we've never had a conversation. We've never had any direction from him, and we're just not happy with that, and so we're going to go with somebody else. I said, okay. And they said, well, so we wanted to know if you'd be interested in being our manager. And I said, well, of course. That's why I went to that meeting, last year. But absolutely. And so they said, okay, could you leave the room for a few minutes? And so I left the room and went out in the hall, and it wasn't 30 seconds, I don't think. They said, hey, come on back in. And they said, okay, we voted. And he said, the way this works, Tony, is it has to be a majority of the vote has to be the winner. And he said, so all three of us voted for you to be the manager. So there's only two things that you have to agree to on top of that. And I said, okay, what's that? And he goes, well, our former manager, which was a good thing, went to 95% of our concerts with us. He was at every show. And the reason he was at every show is because if something happened or something wasn't right, he could get it fixed. He would be there, and he could do the settlement, and he could ask questions, and he could collect the money, and So that's what we need you to do. You need to go to every show we do and be available in case there's a need for something. I said, okay, well, how many shows are you all thinking about doing? Because at the time, they were only going to get back together to do one tour, one short tour, like 25 shows. That was it. And when that was done, they were done. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, 25 shows, that's not bad. I won't have to go. That's not bad, but I wasn't thinking that for every show, it's 3 days. It's a day to get there, a day to do the show, and a day to get home.
Yeah.
So, those 25 days turned into 100 days. So, but I said, sure, I'll do that. And then the other thing was, they really wanted to do a new record. That's when I met with you.
Yeah.
And I said, I don't know. So I went to their former label, RCA, and they were like, no. Joe was still there. And he said, it's just not something we want to do right now. I was like, well, you got their catalog. I mean, my gosh. But they didn't do it. And I went to went to everybody. I went to Universal. And everybody kind of hem-hawed around and was like, no, don't think so. Well, one of the people that I had known and I was really impressed with their independent record label was BMG. BMG was, a worldwide publishing company, but they had started a record label, and they putting a lot of money into promoting and marketing anything that they signed. And so the guy name was Koss Weaver, I think was his name, and he was running BMG. And so they made him a nice offer to do the album and a good deal on the back end. So it came time for to start working on it, picking the songs and figuring everything out. And I kept saying, who do y'all? Harold, I had a meeting with Harold, and he said he'd love to do it. And they go, well, Harold's the best. But then they kept saying at the same time, we've never produced our own record. We think we could produce our record better than anybody. Mm-hmm. And I was like, well, if you don't know how to do that, but if you know how to do it, maybe you're right. And they said, well, we want to try that. We want to try to produce our own selves. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they did. And they came up with the songs. We got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of songs submitted, but they picked them out. And then they came up with the title. I didn't come up with that. They came up with a Southern drawl, not drawl, but drawl. Drawl. And that was the first album that they had done since 2003, something like that. And it did well. It did very well on everywhere but radio. Radio wouldn't play them, for some reason. I guess they feel like, well, we gave them all we had at the time, so we don't need to keep giving it to them back. But anyway, so I decided to put this tour together, and Blake McDaniel, who was here earlier, he was the agent for the band, and he was at CAA, and I knew him very well, and so we put this tour together, and ironically, it freaked us all out because they were selling out. They were selling, it was like they were selling more tickets when they got back together and went out than they were when they were doing the farewell tour.
Wow.
Yeah. And so they enjoyed it, and they were getting paid big money, the biggest money they'd ever been paid on tour forever. And so they were enjoying it, they were enjoying it. And so then we got more offers kept coming in. I said, I know you guys said you only want to do 25 shows, but maybe we could do 25 more next year. And they said, okay. Everybody agree with that? Yeah. Okay. So that was the second year I was managing, and that would have been 2010. And since that time, we've done 338 concerts with Alabama. And they are still touring. They're still touring, getting ready to go to Macon, Georgia next week.
Yeah.
So it's been a wonderful experience for me. I mean, I never dreamed that I would be, when I became a new manager, that I would have a super group like that to work with, And because of that, other artists kept contacting us, and Randy Travis had divorced his wife, who was his manager, and at the time he wanted a new manager, and then but right in the middle of all that, he had the stroke, Mm-hmm. And so when I took over management on Randy, he couldn't sing, and he couldn't walk, and he could barely talk. He could say some few words, And everybody kept saying, "What in the world are you doing trying to manage Randy Travis? He's not able to go in the studio anymore. He can't record a song anymore." And I said, well, I'm thinking there's something, and he needed income, because when he went through his divorce. Of course, that was 50% of everything that he had, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, I'm going to come up with some idea. I don't know what it's going to be. I'm going to try to get him a book deal. He can read and he could write, but he just couldn't talk, you know. So I said, if I get him a book deal, that'll start the ball rolling, his life story by him. And then let me work on, I'm sure there's some songs that Kyle Lenning recorded that had never been released. So I called Kyle, and he said, yeah. He said, we always cut 2 or 3 songs more than we were going to use on each album. He said, and they're all in L.A. in storage. And I said, well, if you went out there and went through the storage, could you find 12, 15 songs, you think? There's that many? He goes, oh, yeah, there's plenty. So he did. He went out to L.A. and went through the vault and found all these unreleased songs that he had recorded and sent them back to me. And, man, they were just the same Randy Travis, you know.
Yeah.
You could hear a hit and a hit and a hit. So I went to Warner Brothers and said, we need to put this out as a new album of new music of Randy Travis, you know. And so while that, and they agreed, but while that was all going on, there's 4 or 5 of the songs they couldn't determine who owned them or who had recorded them. Kyle said, I don't remember recording this song or whatever. So we were trying to, and so the lawyers at Warner Brothers were checking everything. They were checking with the union and checking everybody to make sure that they own those songs. And some of them were DreamWorks songs that when Randy went to Word Records, which was when he was going through his gospel period, then he went from Word to DreamWorks. But he never released, I don't think he ever released anything off of DreamWorks.
I don't think so.
But they did record, you know, some songs. Stroud produced some songs on him. So anyway, we got this going, and then I came up with the idea that I had stolen from Elvis in Concert, which the people at Graceland had contacted us to come down and see this show that they had put together because they wanted to tour it. They wanted to tour it all over the world. And it's called Elvis in Concert, and it was his original band, you know, the whole original band, the Stamps Quartet, the Imperials, the Sweet Inspirations, and Joe Gercio, who was his conductor, arranger, and a 16-piece orchestra. And so they would play live, and Elvis was on video singing.
Yep.
On these giant 50-foot video walls.
Yeah.
Excuse me, got a cold. But anyway, so I went down and saw this show, and I was like, this is friggin' amazing. I mean, you felt like after about 5 minutes you were at an Elvis concert. Because you're watching him sing, and you're seeing his original band, and, you know, I don't think who was... Ronnie Tutt.
Ronnie Tutt.
Ronnie Tutt was the drummer, and
Yeah.
I know David Hood went out with them for a while from most shows, yeah.
Yeah, and the bass player, he was a producer.
Not Norbert.
Norbert Putnam.
Yeah.
He was playing in it. So anyway, I said, I bet I could put something like that together with Randy. I'll just take live concert footage of him, isolate his face and his voice, take all that music off and the crowd noise off, and let the band, his original band, back him live to a click track, and it'll be just like that Elvis in Concert. And the Elvis in Concert was selling out arenas.
Yeah.
You know, it was a big deal.
Today's episode was brought to you by Wild Bill's Fireworks, PopChevy.com, and the Kent Rose Foundation. This episode is also brought to you by theforkend.com.
So I explained it to Randy and Mary. Then I went to Warner Brothers and explained it to them, and they were like, "Well, if you think this might work, well, we're open to talking about it." Found all of his original 9 band members, which had gone on to do other things, and told them what I was trying to do. And so anyway, long story short, we put the show together, and it's instead of Randy singing on video, we actually hired a guy to sing live his vocal, and Randy helped pick him out because we were trying to find somebody. We didn't want anybody to impersonate him. We just wanted somebody that could sing those songs and get close to what they sounded like. And so this guy, James Dupree from Louisiana, who Randy had been in a movie with, he also had his acting career stuff going on. And he had been in a movie with this I call him a kid because he was in his 20s. He played Randy's son. And Randy, in that movie, I think it was called The Price, and Randy's an old country singer that's dying, and he hadn't reconciled with his son, and his son didn't talk, but then on his dying bed, he told his son, I want you to take over where I left off in the music career, and blah, blah, blah. It's a pretty cool little movie.
Yeah.
But so we got him. So he sings 18 of Randy's #1 songs in the concert. The band is the original Randy Travis band, and at the beginning of the show, Randy comes out on stage. He walks out on stage and sits in a chair, 2 chairs, one for him and one for Mary, on stage, so that the audience can see him in person, and he can react with them on between songs and stuff. And then we put a whole video package together where, from the very beginning of his career when he was a kid, all the way through him winning the awards and not getting a record deal, getting turned down by everybody in Nashville for 2 times, 3 times, and being a cook at the Palace out at Opryland. Right. And then we go all the way up until he has the stroke, and we show all that. We show him in the hospital, and we do that between songs.
Wow.
Where did you do the first show at?
Where did we do the first show? The Ryman.
Wow.
We did the Ryman Auditorium.
Very emotional, I'm guessing.
Oh, it was unbelievable, and it sold out immediately. Nobody knew how people were going to react, because it just never had been done before. Yeah. But they loved it. They cried, standing ovations 2 or 3 times during the show. And at the end of the show, he didn't really want to do it, but we talked. We kept telling him, Randy, if you can pull this off, this will be the climax of the show. So at the end of Forever Never Amen, which is the last song on the encore, you need to sing the Amen, just like you did when you got inducted in the Country Music Hall of Fame, And then we need to ask the audience to sing along Amazing Grace. He can sing that whole song, Amazing Grace.
Wow.
And so it was hard. It's hard for him, but he's like, okay, and he did. Well, standing ovation, tears, everybody's crying. It was unbelievable. And so that's how the show ends. He does the, Amen at the end of that, and then he joins the band and the crowd and James. They all sing together the last song. So it works, and we've done about 80-some shows.
Wow!
Right now, he just finished playing, and he was in Beverly Hills Saturday night.
Wow!
At a concert.
You know what? I got to say again, what we always say: something that's never been done before.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's the key.
Yeah, and it's just like with Alabama and Harold, that had never been done before. Yep. When they first came to town, the town really wasn't in favor of the group. They were they were the complete opposite of what country music artists were supposed to look like or sound like. And, they were wearing T-shirts, jeans, and tennis shoes and long hair, and all the other country acts were wearing nudie suits and had burrs. So, it was a big difference. It was a big difference in the look.
It was.
And the sound. But I think I credit you with giving them a lot of that rock, that southern country rock sound that they've ended up being noted for. I mean, there's very few people that you could even say are close to that. have repeated that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I appreciate that, Tony.
Well, it's true. But, you know, I think who? Well, Charlie Daniels for a little while, and Leonard Skinner, and, you know, but there's just not been another band in country music yet that has accomplished what you all were able to accomplish through those years, and it's legendary and it's iconic, and it will never happen again. There'll never be a band to have 43 number one singles again.
Yeah, no kidding.
21 consecutive.
Yeah.
George Strait beat them. You know, he's got 60 or 61, I think. And Ronnie Milsap had 40 or 41 number ones. Mm-hmm. But still, I mean, it's just not going to ever happen again because the charts don't work that way anymore. And radio's different now than it's ever been. So,
I told Harold this, but we met on the country music cruise. I'm working for Star Vista, and of course Tony was on it with Randy and everything. And we had a little meeting about doing this new Alabama thing, this re-record kind of live thing, if you will. And we were talking about Alabama, and the two guys from the company were there, and we were talking about Alabama. And Tony said, if it wasn't for Harold Shedd, there wouldn't be an Alabama. And I thought, boy, what a compliment,
Well,
which I think's true too, yeah.
It's true, and the band agrees with me, and a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So I think Harold should be considered the fifth member of Alabama for what he was able to do all those years.
Amen.
In fact, he in the show now, in our live concert, Randy tells a story every night about when they were doing Roll On at your studio, and it was snowing, and it was cold, and it was freezing, and so they said, how are we going to get this intro done with the CB radio and trucker talking to each other? And they said, well, hell, our bus is parked out here in the lot. Why don't we just get our bus driver to be the guy? And the way the story goes, he tells us to the audience. He said, our producer, Harold Shedd, told one of his engineers, get as long a mic cord as you can get.
That's great.
And take it out to their bus. And I want to hear the engine start up. I want to hear the and I want to hear the driver say, how about you there, Alabama? And they recorded that night in the parking lot at your studio in their bus.
Wow.
That's how they got the intro to that.
And it was bad weather.
Yeah, they said it was freezing cold.
Oh, my God. That's funny.
And that's the name of their tour right now, is the Roll On 2.
Roll On Tour.
Roll On 2.
Roll On 2.
Because they did a Roll On tour back when you were working with them, and now they're doing another one. Yeah. So it's Roll On 2.
Wow. That's cool. That's way cool. Hey, so I heard you talking earlier, and we're going to jump all around here. You were mentioning some Elvis stories, and that you had met Elvis or talked with Elvis. And
I never met Elvis.
Or getting to know Colonel Tom.
Yeah. Yeah, Buddy was friends with Colonel Parker, and ironically, my roommate in my apartment with me was a guy named Sean Nielsen. And Sean Nielsen was the high tenor part in the Stamps Quartet. Mm-hmm. I think his uncle was J.D. Sumner.
Wow! But
he was my roommate. It was just it just happened that way, and so he would tell me all kinds of Elvis stuff and Colonel Parker stuff, and one of the stories that I tell about Sean and Elvis and Colonel Parker and all that was, I got my secretary, Nancy, who would later become my wife. I come back from lunch one afternoon, and she said, I don't know if somebody's playing a joke on me or what, but she said, I had a phone call from a guy that said he was Elvis Presley, and he wanted to speak to you. I was like, what in the world? I mean, he doesn't know me. I don't know him. And she said, well, he left a phone number, and he said that this phone is in the kitchen at his house, and if he doesn't answer it when we call back, his father will answer, and his name is Vernon. So I said, well, okay, well, what do they want? They want Sean Nielsen. They want Sean to call him. Well, I said, all right. Well, we didn't have a landline phone back then, and we didn't have cell phones. So I got in the car and drove over to my apartment. Sean was there asleep, taking a nap. And I told him, I said, we just got a call from Elvis. He wants to talk to you. And he's kind of waking up, and he's kind of groggy. He said, yeah. He probably wants me to come down to Memphis and just sing some gospel songs with him. He said, we've done that 4 or 5 times, and he just does it when he feels like it. And wow. I was like, well, call him. Here's the number. And he said, oh, yeah, that's the kitchen number. So we knew it was Elvis.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so he
right.
calls him and he said, Sean, I need you to do a big favor for me, and you're the only person that can do it. And he said, so here's what it is. My plane, Lisa Marie, is in the air right now. It's heading to Nashville, and it's going to land at the airport, and I want you to get on that plane, and then they're going to turn around and go to Denver, Colorado. And a friend of mine, a good friend of mine, who was a police chief in Denver, died, and I was going to go sing at his funeral, but for whatever reason, he couldn't do it. So he said, I want you to go, and I want you to sing Danny Boy a cappella at the funeral, at the gravesite, not at the church. So Sean's like, okay. So we go to the airport. He gets on the plane. They go to Denver. And a limousine picks him up, drives him straight to the cemetery. He gets out, and of course the preacher knew he was coming, and so he said, and now a gift from Elvis Presley. One of his band members, Sean, is going to sing a song in honor of whatever the police chief was. So he sings Danny Boy, gets back in the limousine, gets back on the plane, flies back to Nashville. They called me and they said, we're going to land at about 6 o'clock. And so I go pick him up at the airport. And when he's coming down the steps, the pilot gives him an envelope. And it says, and when he got in the car, he was reading it. He was like, dear Sean, nobody else could have ever done this. You're my one and only dependable person I can call on all the time. Love, Elvis. And there was $5,000 in cash.
Oh my goodness.
Which was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of money for Sean. He was just blown away.
Wow.
But yeah, that was my one Elvis situation experience. And then the other one with Colonel Parker, him and Buddy had been friends for years. So I think he was kind of wearing Buddy out a lot about being in the Country Music Hall of Fame. He thought he should be in the Country Music Hall of Fame, Colonel Parker. And Buddy was like, to himself, I'm not going to speak for Buddy, but he probably said, that ain't going to happen. But so Colonel Parker keeps calling him, and finally Buddy said, well, I got this young kid here working with me that's on the CMA board. I mean, maybe you should talk to him about this, and maybe he can help you better than I can, because he knows all those board members, and And so Parker said, yeah, let me talk to him. What's his name? So he calls me, and he tells me the story, and he's got a lot of balls, Colonel Parker, because he was like, I deserve to be in the Country Music Hall of Fame for everything that I've done, from Hank Snow to Elvis and Eddie Arnold, and all the money I've donated to charity, and the limousine that I donated to the Country Music Hall of Fame, Elvis's limousine, and blah, blah, blah. He just won't stop, he's just hammering me. And I said, well, I understand, Colonel. I'll be glad to take it to the committee. I'll be glad to take it. And I said, but honestly, the one thing I'm going to say to you right now is it might be difficult for you to get in the Hall of Fame, because Elvis is not in the Hall of Fame. I think if Elvis was in the Hall of Fame, maybe it would make it a lot easier for you to be in the Hall of Fame. And he said, well, Elvis will be in the Hall of Fame one day, but I definitely need to be in the Hall of Fame. So you go to work on that, And so I did. Naive me, I go into the board and pitching Colonel Tom Parker for the Hall of Fame, and I got a lot of looks. and they go, well, say the same thing, well, Elvis Presley's not even in the Hall of Fame yet. Why would we put him in there before, So I'm just asking. I've been asked to ask, and here's all of his things he's done. So however that works, you all put it in the pipe and smoke it,
Yeah.
And so I called Parker back. I said, okay, you've been submitted now. We'll see what happens. Well, he'd call me once a week.
Oh, wow.
And if I was on another call or not in the office when he called, he'd say, get somebody to find him and have him call me back in 5 minutes. I'm a very busy man. Click. But so
fun.
yeah, and then he asked me to produce his 80th birthday party in Las Vegas at the Las Vegas Hilton. So I did that. I'd spent a couple of weeks putting that together, and Baron Hilton paid for the whole thing, and it was a big deal. There's about 1,000 people there in the ballroom.
Wow.
And but I asked him, I said, well, Colonel, what do you want on your birthday party? What kind of music do you want? And he was like, I want a comedian, I want a magician, I want a girl singer, I want a male crooner, and I want a 16-piece orchestra. Okay, I wrote all that down. I'm thinking, well, here we go. So I start checking around. I basically found everything he wanted. I got the orchestra, and I was trying to think earlier who the male artist was. I think it was Vic Damone.
Vic Damone.
I think. And then the girl was, there was a couple, a male-female couple, Edie Gourmet.
Yeah.
Got her, and then
Steve Lawrence. Are they together
Steve
too?
Lawrence, yeah. And then, but I didn't know where to find a magician that would work in a ballroom like that. They'd have to do something quick and big. And so I called Colonel Parker back. I said, what kind of magician do you want? I said, he goes, have you ever heard of Harry Blackstone Jr.? And I said, yes, sir, I represent Harry Blackstone Jr.
Wow.
He said, well, he's the only magician that ever opened for Elvis Presley. And he said, he opened for Elvis in Aloha from Hawaii when they filmed that TV
Wow.
special. And he said he did about 30 minutes opening act for Elvis. So he knew him, and I said, well, I know him. I represent him. I'm his agent, but if you want him, I'm sure he'll do it. And he did. So we did the whole Colonel Parker birthday celebration.
Wow.
It was kind of cool.
That is so cool.
That is way cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Now, by any stretch, was Joe Gershel the band director for that?
He
still?
was.
Yeah.
He was. Yeah. Joe was, he was good friends with Parker.
Yeah.
In fact, he told me one time, he said, a lot of people have asked me to write a book about Elvis and Parker. He said, I won't go near that. He said, because I want to tell you something, Tony. He said, Elvis knew exactly what Colonel Parker was doing and did and went along with it. And people always felt like Colonel Parker was maybe taking advantage of Elvis, and he was getting 50% instead of 15 or 20%. He was taking 50%. But Elvis knew that, he agreed to it. So it wasn't Colonel Parker trying to take advantage of him. He agreed to the deal, and the deal worked for Elvis, and it worked for Colonel Parker. He said there was some disagreements from time to time on certain things that Elvis wanted to do and the Colonel didn't want to do, or the Colonel wanted him to do and Elvis didn't want to do. And some of those have come to life in this movie that just got released, which was really a well-done movie. Tom Hanks played Colonel Parker. But Elvis wanted to play Las Vegas, and he wanted to have a big orchestra, and he'd never played with an orchestra before. And so he kept telling Colonel Parker, I want that orchestra at the Las Vegas Hilton, and that was Joe Gershel.
Yeah.
He backed everybody that played at the Las Vegas Hilton. It was called Joe Gershel and the something Horns.
I didn't know that.
Anyway, so finally, Parker hired Joe Garcia to be the musical director and arranger and the conductor. Joe's the one that came up with the 2001 Space Odyssey.
Knew that. Yep.
Introduction, of the way the show started.
Yeah.
And we became good buddies through the years. And he actually, Joe, I kind of did the same thing with Joe after Elvis died. Joe said, I still have all the arrangements and the charts. I can do an 80-piece orchestra. I said, well, why don't I put you on tour with the symphony orchestras around the country? I mean, you could go in and do a night, what do they call it? Something, Joe Garcia's tribute to Elvis, or, the music of Elvis Presley, conducted and performed by Joe Garcia. That's what it was. And I did. I booked him on some of those shows, and he loved it, especially in Europe. I sent him to Europe a couple of times. And he would just go work with the symphony orchestra and be the conductor and the arranger, and it was all Elvis music, But it was great.
That's cool.
It's weird how you have connections with people that you would never think you would have anything to do with, or you didn't know them, you didn't. Like Elvis Presley is probably the biggest superstar in the history of America.
Yeah, I don't think probably.
In
I
my
think
mind, he is.
Me too.
And just like Alabama, they're the biggest country rock band in the history of country music.
Yeah, man.
Period.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we have an intro at all their concerts now. It's kind of cool. They didn't like it at first, but now they see how the audience reacts, and so the stage is dark, and Randy and Teddy come out, they're in place with the band, and then there's some instrument tuning up stuff going on, and then this voice says, and now you are you're going to experience an unbelievable event tonight with music from the greatest country rock band of all time, Alabama. And then that's when the show starts, and the crowd just goes ape.
Oh, I bet.
They just, you can't hear the music. They're so loud. It's unbelievable. But yeah, they're still having fun, still doing it.
Great.
Yeah, that's way cool. Now, you were earlier, you were talking to Blake, you mentioned getting involved with Farm Aid too, or being a part of that.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that was a big deal, and about ended me, honestly. I ended up in the hospital after it was over, but I represented Willie Nelson, and so we were doing a show at the Illinois State Fair in Springfield, Illinois, and Buddy was with me, and Willie asked us to come on the bus before the show and said, I want to talk to you about doing something. And Buddy said, well, like what? And he says, well, I want to do a concert for America. And they had just done Live Aid, in London and Philadelphia, and around the 4th of July, about 5 weeks earlier, which was to raise money to feed the hungry in other countries. But Willie said, I want to do a concert to raise money for America and for the American farmers. He said, they're going out of business every day. We said, okay. And I'm thinking it's just going to be him. He wants to figure out when to do it. And then he says, and I want to do it in a stadium. And I want to do rock and country and blues and gospel. I want to do all genres of music. And I want to get the biggest names that exist, because I want to raise a lot of money, And I want to be televised live, and I want to sell 80,000 tickets. And, I was like, he might have been smoking way too much that afternoon. But I said, well, okay. And he said, can you get the governor? Is he coming to the show tonight? Yes, sir. Well, can you get him on here so we could ask him if he could help us find a stadium here in Illinois? Because that's the heartland of America. So the governor came, he got on the bus, he brought it, and that's the funny thing, he brought the state trooper with him, his bodyguard. And of course, Willie smokes pot like he smoked cigarettes. So, and there's the governor and the state trooper sitting there. They don't say a word. And Willie says, "I need a stadium. You got a stadium here in Illinois that they could donate for this concert?" And the governor's like, he said, "Soldier Field in Chicago." No, Willie said, "No, I need something in the farmland. I need something like in central Illinois or Indiana or Kentucky, whatever." And the governor said, "Well, the biggest stadium we've got is in Champaign, Illinois, and it's 80,000 seats at the University of Illinois." And he said, "Let me call them and see if they're available, what days they've got available." And he asked Willie, "When do you want to do this?" He said, "As soon as we can." Well, that really sent shockwaves up me, because I figured, how in the world you can pull this off as soon as you can? That meant in about 4 or 5 weeks, which was what it was.
Wow.
And so the governor called the school, and they said, "Yeah, we're open on this Saturday." I think it was September the 23rd or the 28th. I can't remember. Anyway, governor said, "Well, hold on to that. Don't let anybody do anything with it. I'm going to do a show there that day with Willie Nelson." So he leaves, and Buddy says to Willie, "Well, Willie, who are you going to get to? This is a big undertaking. Who are you going to get to promote this?" And Willie said, "You. You're going to promote it." And Buddy's like, "Me?" And he said, "Yeah, you know how to promote. You've been promoting me for years." And Buddy said, "Well, okay." And then he said, "Well, who's going to get all this technical stage and lights and sound and video and TV and who's going to do that?" And he says, "Tony." And he said, "Well, what about all the talent? Who's going to coordinate all that? And you want all these acts on the show?" And he said, "Well, Tony, that's what you do, isn't it?" And I was like, "Yeah." He said, "All right, well, y'all get to work on it. I got to go do a show." So,
Can you have it by next week?
well, really, I mean, yeah, it was the next day. We were on calls with 20 or 30 people, It's unbelievable. But we pulled it off. We had 68 acts on one day, on one stage. We had the only time it had ever been used, the second time it had ever been used was the turntable stage, excuse me, which was 80-foot diameter circle. Wow. And there was a wall right down the middle. So while this act is performing in front of the crowd in the stadium, they're setting up the next act behind this wall and doing sound check while this one's playing. It's amazing how they pulled it off. And then when it's time, they turn the stage, and you got a whole nother band. There's no downtime.
Yeah, man.
So, and we'd sold out 80,000 tickets. We got, $500,000 in sponsorships. We got TNN to be the network to broadcast it live from 10 in the morning till midnight. And they paid, a fee to do that, which went into the pot, which was a big help. But anyway, the part that was the hardest for me was dealing with all these artists and their managers and their road managers and record labels. And then I started getting lobbied by people wanting to get on the show because everybody heard about it. But when somebody says, Willie says, "Okay, I want you to get John Denver and Bob Dylan and Merle Haggard and Billy Joel." You're just like, "Oh yeah, right, sure." Well, they're all going to do it, but they did.
Yeah.
I had to go track them all down and find out who represented who, but I got them all, and not one person said no.
Wow.
Not one person. And then we weren't paying them anything, weren't covering any expenses. It was all at their own expense to be on this. And so they knew what it was about. And, little things like John Fogerty. That's one of my favorite stories to tell, because I was done booking the whole show. We're about 2 weeks away, and I got a call from Francis Preston. at BMI. And she says, Tony, I need you to do me a favor. I said, yes, ma'am, what? And she goes, I need you to put John Fogerty on Farm Aid. And I said, I can't. And to be honest, at this time I was exhausted and I was not going to add anybody else. There was no way. I was getting screamed at by the stage manager saying, we don't even think we can pull this off. And so I said, well, I'm sorry, Frances, but I just can't add any more acts. And I wasn't thinking about him. I wasn't thinking about who he was, you know. And she said, well, you really need to do this because he hasn't performed live in 11 years in front of anybody. And he's one of our clients, and he's a good guy, and he needs this shot. And I was like, I'm sorry. I can't do it. I can't do it, you know. And she said, well, you think about it. And so she called me back the next day, and she said, did you think about it? And of course, Frances Preston, to me, was a friend, and she's the one that got me on the CMA board.
Yep.
And she was probably the most powerful female in Nashville at the time.
Yeah.
And she knew everybody, and she was running the CMA. And so if there was anybody I wanted to help, it would have been her, you know. So I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to let this guy sing one acoustic song. And she goes, no, he needs a band. He needs to bring his band. I was like, okay, 2 songs with his band. That's it. Thank you. You're not going to regret it, you know. So come day of the show, everything's going, you know, 100 miles an hour, and I hear the announcer say, coming up next, for the first time in 11 years, John Fogerty. And it hit me. I never really thought, well, who's John Fogerty? But when they said that, and I'm listening, and the crowd went crazy. In fact, they say that the stadium rocked a little bit.
I believe it.
Like 2 or 3 inches.
Yeah, man.
And they were stomping, and I said, John Fogerty, Creedence Clearwater Revival? That John Fogerty? Holy shit. You know, it just had never entered my mind that's who it was.
Wow.
And he started singing Bad Moon Rising, and I just started crying. I said, how could I have stopped this from happening in front? This is historic. And he had never played in public since he left the band.
Wow.
That was the first time.
Wow.
It was also the first time that Van Halen performed with, after David Lee Roth left, Sammy Hagar was their new lead singer. That was the first time they ever performed with him.
I didn't know that. Wow.
Yeah. And something happened during that performance, by the way, that I don't even know if I can tell the story, but I was on the bus with Willie, and so, you know, they were getting ready to introduce Van Halen. It was a big deal.
Yeah.
And so they introduced Van Halen. Ladies and gentlemen, the first time with new lead vocalist Sammy Hagar. And you might have to edit this. And so Sammy Hagar comes out, Eddie Van Halen comes out, and they go, hello, all you tractor motherfuckers.
Oh, my God.
Oh, all you tractor-loving motherfuckers. And crowd went crazy. Well, Willie's got, get him off the stage now. Does he not know we're on live television? And we got kids in the audience. And I was like, so I ran up on stage, and his manager, the manager was named Ed. And I ran up to him, and I grabbed him, and I said, you got to get him off stage. Willie said, they're done. He doesn't want them on here. And he goes, you go tell him. I said, I'm not going out there, but you need to tell the band. I'm telling you, I'm serious. And about that time, the road manager came up, and he was screaming at him too, and said, Willie said, get him off stage, you know. But he wouldn't go out there, and they kept going, and they did their 4 songs. And but you know, stuff like that you're a part of, and you just never know that that's going to happen. Who in the world would have thought that somebody would have said that on live television?
And one of the hottest acts in the world, too. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But Farm Aid was a tremendous amount of work. It's probably my most the biggest accomplishment I've ever done in my career.
Yeah, man.
And it's still going. They're still there. I think we're getting ready to do the 40th or 45th.
Wow.
Something right now, and I'm still involved with them. It's been great, and they've raised about $250 million since they started for the family farmers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And saved a lot of people from losing their farms,
Wow.
bankrupt.
That's incredible.
It is.
That is incredible. Hey, so what kind of stuff are you working on? New stuff? What are you doing new now?
Well, I've always tried to have one or two or three new artists that we're trying to develop. We're working with a couple of new acts right now. That one of them's called Red Clay Strays. They're phenomenal. They're out of Mobile, Alabama. Cody Payne, who has been with me for, I guess, 10 years. He's the one that discovered them.
Yeah.
He found them in a club, and he came to me and he said, because I hired him as an agent,
Yeah.
but he came to me and he said, I'd really like to manage this band. And I was like, I was looking at him and I was listening to him and I was like, he kind of reminds me of me.
Yeah.
I can tell that he's sincere and he really believes in this band. And
Yeah.
I said, well, if you really feel like they got a shot, let's do it.
Yeah.
And so he signed them, and they pitched. We pitched. Nobody was interested at the time, so we decided to do our own album, independent. But we didn't have the money to do it, or they didn't have the money to do it. So we did a GoFundMe. Cody came up with all that. He came up with a GoFundMe. I think we were trying to raise $30,000 to do this album, and it ended up being $80,000 that we raised, and it was just from people that had seen them on the internet.
Yeah.
They'd never had a record on the radio. They'd never been on television. It was just strictly video of them live on the internet. So that record, they recorded it, they produced it, and they released it, and it did very, very well. Made them some money, and then we started looking for another deal. So we went to all the labels in town, and the band was kind of like, let's just keep doing independent.
Yeah.
And I said, that's fine, because that's what y'all want to do. But all the labels that we went to wanted to sign them. Every one of them became like a bidding war. And so how hard it is to say to a record label president, like if Harold called me up and said, I want to sign that band, and I said, well, they don't want to sign. They don't want to sign with you. They don't want to sign with anybody. It's not you. They don't want to sign with anybody. They don't want a record label. And so that's what we were doing, And a couple of them are my close friends, at Warner Brothers and Sony. Randy Goodman, he was really hot on the trail to do them. And anyway, the end of that story is they didn't want to do a record deal, but they're out on the West Coast doing a run, and these young A&R guys from Atlantic Records, or Atlantic RCA, I guess it's the imprint of the same company. They're going to their shows, and they got backstage, and they're hanging out, and they're the same age. They're young. They're in their late 20s. And they kind of hit it off and kind of bonded and became friends. And it turns out that they were with RCA Records, West Coast. Mm-hmm. And they kept saying, man, we'd love to represent you all. And they go, well, we don't want to be, we're not really, well, we don't care. We're not country either. We don't really do anything with the Nashville office. You'd be with us out here, So that changed their thinking a little bit. And it got into cutting the deal. And I have to give Cody credit. He did an amazing job. I won't name numbers, but they offered them a big advance, big advance, and they turned it down.
Which is incredibly unusual today.
It
Go
is.
ahead, yeah.
Yeah. And so then we talked, and Cody said, well, I just don't think they want to do this. And I was like, well, okay. I said, but if they offered them that much money as an advance, they'll double that. I know they will. So he was like, well, and he goes back and they doubled it.
Yeah.
The band says, no, we're not interested. Now, these guys are not, they're not well off at all. They'd been working for $2,500, $5,000 a night, 5 of them splitting it 5 ways, And this would have changed their lives, if they'd done it. But they kept saying no. Wow. So finally, I think Cody went back to them and said, we're going to pass. We really, really, really appreciate what y'all done, and the guys like you, and if we ever try to do a deal with the label, we'll call you. And they go, well, we'll triple it. Wow. Oh my God. And he said, well, I talked to the band. So talked to the band, and they go, well, yeah, let's do it. So they signed with RCA LA.
Yeah.
And that album, their first album, just came out. They're getting ready to release their second album. But the ironic thing about Red Clay Strays is that they have never had a hit song on the radio. They've had some hits on the internet, and there's a cult following for them, and it's just amazing. I mean, when you get a band like that has 20 million streams on one song that they wrote, and never had it on radio, never been on TV, never been on a tour with any big acts, it's just absolutely amazing. And I'll end the story with this little story. It was funny because Cody, I called Cody one day and I said, I want you to go to dinner with me tonight to meet with the AEG people. They were friends of mine that I'd done lots of business with through the years out of Los Angeles. They're like, next to Live Nation, they're the number 2 promoter in the country. Oh. And he goes, what do they want to talk about? What do they want? I just said, I just want you to meet them. They're not trying to get your tour or anything, but they're good people, and I've worked with them a lot, and you need to know them. And so he said, all right. So he goes to dinner. And Mark Norman, who was, I think he was the president of Worldwide Touring, was there, and he was a friend. And anyway, we're having dinner and talking about everything. And so Cody was like, so what'd you guys want to talk about? Well, he shouldn't have said that because that wasn't, it was just, I told them I was wanting to introduce him to them and them to him. And they said, well, we're not here to talk about your band, although we love them. We'd love to work with them at some point, but that's not why we're here. We're just wanting to meet you and get to know you. And Cody said, okay, well, I appreciate that. He said, well, everybody tell me what you do, So Mark said, well, I'm the CEO of, and I do this. And the next guy says, I do this. And this girl goes, and I do the Rolling Stones tour. And then this guy goes, I do this, and I do this. And Cody said, did you mean the real Rolling Stones? And they go, yeah, we're doing their tour this year. They're doing 25 shows. And stadiums, they're all stadiums. And he said, oh, that's cool. And you do all their? She said, yeah, I do everything for that tour. And he said, okay, well, cool. So anyway, at the end of the dinner, Mark Norman says to Cody, I'm not offering you a date on the Rolling Stones tour, but what if that happened? Do you think that your band would want to do that? And Cody was like, well, yeah, of course. And he said, all right, well, I'm not, we're not offering you one, but just want to know what you would do if we did. So they leave, and a couple of weeks go by, and they call Cody and said, we've got this one date. If you want to consider doing it, you could open for the Stones. I think it was in Boston. I'm not sure. And Cody said, yeah, that'd be awesome. So that was the first time they ever opened for a headliner in a stadium. And think about it.
Yeah.
It was the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
The Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
And then we found out that the band actually approves each opening act on their tour. And they try to do a different one on every show, different one. But they ask for, I think he said they wanted 8 songs and videos and a bio and a picture. And that the band all sits in a room when they decide on who they want, and they go through that and they listen to 30, 40 seconds of the song and then move on to the next one. And they said that Jagger said, I like that Strait band.
Wow.
Let's try them. So that's how they got it.
Wow.
All right.
How cool is that?
That was cool.
Yeah, man. You would have signed this band. If you'd have heard them, you would have signed this band. They're great. I mean, great.
Well, they're doing great, and they're super guys, and I'm so happy for Cody, who's handling them and doing everything for them, and they love him, and it's been a great project. And then there's a couple of other acts that we're working with.
Before you go any further, I want to say one thing. Having a great mentor is very, very important. You had one, I had one over there, and you being the mentor to them is really cool, I think.
Yeah. With
experience and everything, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, they're good guys, and they're going to go a long way.
That's way cool.
They got a sold out Madison Square Garden date coming up.
Wow.
So
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I just think that's important.
And they just played Stagecoach this weekend.
Yeah.
A big festival out in Los Angeles. So, and then there's a couple of other acts, Mark Chestnut that we represent, and Exile. Mm-hmm. Remember Exile?
Oh, yeah.
We represent them. And,
love Exile.
And then we've got, we're actually working with Mark's son, Casey Chestnut.
Who's really good, by the way.
Who just got out of the Marine Corps and sings great, is a good songwriter, looks great. Mm-hmm. And Mark, we're managing Mark, but he asked me, he said, if there's anything you can do to help my son, he said, he's a lot better than I am.
And Mark's pretty good.
Yeah. And then there's a trio out of Canada, 3 girls that we've been working on called the Heels, Heels, like, high heels. And they're great, 3-part harmonies, good entertainers, beautiful girls. So we're working on that. And that's about it, because my rule at my company is that we don't want to sign any more acts that we can't physically handle.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So, we've got enough people on staff that deals with all of this, what I just told you, but there's really no room unless I hire more staff, and which I don't really want to do. I want to keep it the way it is, and I'm available to all of our clients 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and it's busy. You know what I mean? There's a lot to do there. So I don't want to keep representing more artists. I've kind of decided that if one of them leaves or one of them retires, then we'll look at another act.
Yeah.
But we're very happy with what we're doing right now.
Cool.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, man. Well, man, this has been so great.
It has.
I'm so glad you came out here today. I know you took a lot of time out of your day to do it.
No, I wouldn't give anything to be here with Mr. Shed. I wanted to figure out what behind the shed was, but I guess I'll get that after we're done.
Yeah. You're not there yet, no.
Yeah, that's a new album we got for you.
I like that.
Yeah. That's funny. Well, man, just thank you so much, Harold.
Thank you, Tony. We appreciate it so much.
Well, I
and we
appreciate
know that the viewers and listeners will really get a lot from what you've said, your
Well, I hope.
stories and how you did it,
Yeah.
and the success you had by doing what you thought you were supposed to do. I love that.
Yeah, I think I was put here to do what I'm doing. And,
Yeah.
And I've gotten pretty good at it and lucky. I've been very fortunate, it's just time after time after time after time. So I think that's what I was meant to be,
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And it's an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, man.
It's an honor to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah, man.
Today's episode was brought to you by Wild Bill's Fireworks, PopChevy.com, and the Kent Rose Foundation. This episode is also brought to you by theforkend.com. Tune in next week to the music station, WWCC with Harold Shedd, broadcasting live from beautiful downtown Bremen, Georgia, 1440 on your radio dial. What you just heard just happened. Thank you for listening to Behind the Shed. We hope you enjoyed it. Tune in next week as we go Behind the Shed.